Hello. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay. I muted all participants. Can I just get some thumbs up or something if you guys can hear me? Okay, great. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to our 7 poets who are going to be reading tonight. And thank you to everybody who bought tickets and showed up in support of INNISFREE. I'm guessing most of you are here because you love poetry or you're at least interested in it, I hope. Many of you are familiar with INNISFREE. It's one of only 3 poetry exclusive bookstores in the United States, which makes us pretty special. It's located in Boulder, Colorado. And we have recently started to close down our physical location due to the pandemic. Finances have been tough and Boulder is really expensive, but we're currently trying to figure out how to exist in the liminal space between our old physical location and whatever comes next. One of the ways that we are choosing to exist in this liminal space is by keeping engaged with our community through readings and workshops. This reading is part of a series of readings and workshops called the INNISFREE Workshop Series, hosted by INNISFREE staff and Collective Aporia, which is a poetry collective, and I'll post the link in the chat a little bit later during our reading. They also host Pay What You Can workshops every month. They are amazing. You should definitely check them out. And we hope to continue doing these workshops and readings as long as possible, even after we find a new physical location. It's so good to connect with everybody during these strange times of separation and division. So yeah, also abundant thanks to all of the 7 poets for self-organizing in support of INNISFREE. I hardly had to do anything except reply to some emails. So thank you all so much. We're excited to hear you read. And I'll just get started with our first intro. So our first poet tonight is going to be Angel Dominguez. Angel Dominguez has survived a 100-year flood, a close encounter with a bear, a fire, a second fire, and a lifetime of systemic racism. They will not go down without a fight. They're the author of Rose Sun Water from the Operating System Press, came out this year, and Black Lavender Milk, Timeless Infinite Light 2015. Their 3rd book, Desgraciado, The Collected Letters, is forthcoming with Nightboat Books next year in 2021. So thank you so much, Angel. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, and we're ready to hear you read.
Great, thank you, CA, for gathering this wondrous group of poets. I'm so excited for tonight. I love INNISFREE so much. I used to live in Boulder. I went to the Jack Kerouac School. I spent a lot of time in INNISFREE. Those coveted window spots, the one next to the plug, that's the energy I'm thinking of right now. And I just kind of want to like give some of that energy back in a way. Because if I start to think that I won't step foot in there, I'm going to start to cry for 7 minutes, and no one wants that shit. So I am going to read some new stuff. I'm going to read a piece of Rose Sun Water that I have not read out loud before. It is forthcoming from the Operating System. Pandemic makes publishing books so much fun. And if I have time, I'll also read a new letter from Desgraciado, which is forthcoming with Nightboat Books. This is called If Not a Future, Then What? A Present? What do you place between the book and yourself? The city in my dreams is not my city, but the way I keep my city alive in my mind's eye. In the city of my dreams, the orchard remains untouched, still standing. The city I grew up in, it does not exist, nor has it ever. Cities are constant and unraveling, not fixed and yet immovable. There's a minutia at work across a spectrum of light. And maybe you've seen it, the tug of the way that things could have been, how the ancillary realities splinter moments so easily. What if you had answered your phone or left a few minutes later? And what if you didn't sign your name or leave? Or what if you kept becoming? The resonance is part sunlight, by which I mean mostly moon. The mirror is made of earth rib, only earth is all mothers. To have vacated the time stream, having only half read these things, there comes another way of seeing by feeling. Energetic osmosis by proxy, we might be folding time in this small moment of language and breathing. In the after of it all, fluctuating across multiplicities and realities, something we slide into across other dimensions, daydreaming as we murk down the highway, not pummeling, but tunneling forward through time and geography. And some days, I wonder what the sky thinks about me. I worry that the clouds feel too heavy to themselves, and I wonder if the sun has anxiety. I'm always in a rain, it seems. Sometimes I am so much highway and forgetting, and sometimes I feel obvious, and sometimes I feel the salt in the air and know where the ocean will go. I had to leave the mountains to find myself again. And on the orchard, time moves differently. These cacti turn to goo under the abundance of rain. And then there's the camellias again. There's that mirror again, positioning language in such a way that our temporal dissonance finds its harmonies. I need you to sing with me. I need you to believe me. We can fold this temporal tract, and you can sit next to me on this bus as we carve out the edge of a continent. Hold me down like language holds the rain. These words, they will eat each other, and we breathe when we need to. Language is ever emergent, mercurial. The whole sequence is like a static in the wave. Celestune shimmers in my breathing, and I pour out a pound of salt from my eyeballs, exhale 12 miles of sand for you to walk along. I am always this much beach. I am always this much space, even when I'm working, even when I'm crying, even when I'm alone. I am cosmic imprint, heavy with the memory of all that ails me, all that I have failed to do. And in my dreams, I drive from here to Merida. I drive from here to 2006. I drive from here to where you are now, and we form a new language from our distant dissonance, and I am never on time. A cenote opens up to eat the house, to keep it safe. The house is with the ancestors now. The inhabitants, they scatter across the city void and beyond. The pitaya becomes several palms around the city. The roses explode out across the landscape, blossoming in the rain before evaporating along with the water. The aguacates lend themselves to immigrant households to keep their families fed. The lemons scatter along with the oranges to form two new tints of sunlight that always look like mama's lemons and shisha's oranges, and the colors of the house become other times of day, lilting memories from the soul of those who knew how precious this dream could be. I tattoo the wallpaper to my body. I dig a hole where I keep every stone safe. The house itself evaporates into rain that does not end, by which I mean all of our dreams become clouds to nourish the future, to nourish our ancestors and those who are gone but still roaming within us. I have a dream where I drive the entirety of the grid while the city sleeps. I work the city's sleep into a type of fabric and craft a shawl. Y yo quiero hacer un tilma de Los Ángeles y el poder de tus sueños. No me quiero olvidar de nada cuando llega el tiempo a soñar otro sueño. Quiero ser como un hilo de luz, a contestar los sueños, los vidas, los tiempos. No quiero que nadie se olvida. Somos flores que crecen a manifestar lo que nunca ha pasado antes. There are more words right now than there have ever been before. I think eventually I'll learn to let go of the city, or I will become the city. There is no in-between. Merida melts into the mountain, or as the clouds skim the microclimate, the image of the peninsula drizzles. It's in these moments that I see you most clearly, when the sky opens up its portals, when the light leans into you, and we converse in these moments of liminality. Our language is a strong light that guides spirits home beyond the structure of a house. Light a candle tonight with the intention of hope beyond hope. Leave it burning until all the wax has ended vertically. What do you see? What is this now that becomes after? In the valley of your spine lies a harvest of endocrine flowers that give you a new, soft life. You tend to them by taking it easy on yourself. Learn to cry, returning to write, writing this book together with me now, and I dreamt we wrote that. I keep nodding off into the spiral like 6 a.m., fingertips touching a stream, both frozen and running, and there is this continuity in the way that these electrons hum. The swaying of the pen keeps reversing its order, forming other portals in words I don't know. The rain taps at your window in triplets on the bus or the airplane or the home, and the atmosphere grows a language to understand itself. As the house is destroyed, its components become. At the end of the orchard, nothing makes as much sense as when the orchard appeared beside the lone airstrip in a redwood forest, which itself is an opaque dream. The trees grow smaller as the plot of earth begin to swirl. As the solstice sun, the structures unmake themselves and the boards of the homes become trees unplanted, not nailed. The architectural components rejoin the unangled shapes of the soil. The acreage tips over into the ravine only to remain suspended between the spiral of soil and sky, the language lingering between your lungs and your mouth. And what changes when you speak these spells out loud? And how will you go on living now? And what, if anything, has changed? And how will you change? And how will you grow? And who will you continue becoming? It's time to wake up and get to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Something that's going to stick with me from your work is the relationship of our dreams to our history, to the many cultures and sprawling and independent world. Sometimes it's hard to remember that we are part of a web, and I think that showed through in the poetry that you just shared. Thank you. Next is Brian Kim Stefans. Brian Kim Stefans' forthcoming book is Festivals of Patience, the Verse Poems of Rimbaud from Kenning Editions, coming in January 2021, so just a couple months away. You can read his most recent poem, A Theatrical Oasis in the Spine of the Moon, or The Deep State, at aras.net. I will put the link in the chat at the end of our reading, where you can also find several of his previous books in PDF, his digital text works, and sundry other things. He teaches in the English department at UCLA, and he's building a bird sanctuary. Brian, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you so much.
How's this sound? Is it all right? Great.
Yeah, audible.
Well, I do want to thank you all for inviting me to read, and I love reading poetry aloud, as anyone who knows me knows, and thank you, Conrad, for thinking of me. And I don't know the bookstore, but I know you use bookstores. I mean, I know bookstores, and I regret that there are so many problems in Boulder, which of course I think of as a very crunchy kind of city, but it sounds like it's actually like every city that had virtues is suffering right now. So anyway, this is a poem called My Identity. It's in kind of tercets that are numbered, but I'm not going to read the numbers. And it's a poem that I don't even know what to think of myself. And if you hate it, I admire you. My identity. I'd like to take a stand about my identity. I'd like to be half Asian and half white. I'd like to do that. I'd have awesome self-confidence. The sun would breathe in my Instagram photos, saturated reds and oranges like an Italian sorbet, Zarathustra dawns and Machiavellian twilights. I'd like to sing this native song. I'd like to know the words. With a melody by Debussy, lyrics by Genet, this anthem would unfurl over the hills and plains. I'd like to retreat into my identity. I'd like never to speak, just speak when I'm meant. I'd like to be race loyal. I'd like to sign the document. I mean it, that I really mean this country, the one that is half Asian and half white, the one between Mongolia and the local in and out. I'd like to be fit with tight black jeans to ensure the procreation of my impetuous race, the one known for poetry, the one known for trade. I'd like the world to know that I own my body, the one appropriated by the artistic elite, the one never painted impossibly naked. I'd like to marry ladies who are just like me. Just one, of course, but I'd like to have to pick between those who are born here and those who are fake. I'd like to have a border, colorful native costumes worn only on the holidays. I'd like to have holidays where we commemorate famines, drink alcohols from ancient grains. I'd like to have a president who looks like me. I'd like to have a movie star from my race who tells my story. I'd like to sleep deeply and dream only of my race. I'd like to know if my literature is up to grade, that the literature of my race is being read, that the literature is being written with pen and ink. I want to fight the powers that be, who crush me with their platitudes and urges to cede, to flee and be lessened, to give up the territory. I'd like to be a missile in a missile test and trace a glowing arc in the liberal sky that grants me identity, intent, and a place to cry. I'd like to take a stand about my identity. I'd like to be half Asian and half white. I'd like to sail on a milky sea and eat kimchi. The quail would fly into my lap when I wasn't even aiming. Gold records for songs I never sang would adorn my home. I'd have the forearms of Rambo, but never fight in Vietnam. I'd like to find a home for my damn country, over 16 blocks of storefronts in LA County, with restaurants half Asian, half white, only foods I like. I'd like to be funny. I'd like to tell jokes only half Asians would pee in their pants about, and half white Asians would know by heart, like Ariram. I'd like to know the authenticity of this leather hide, to have a league of peers with a similar disability, not exactly like mine perhaps, but using it for a template. Yes, that was then, black was white, I'd prefer. Yes, I could talk, but talk better now with words handed down to me by centuries of sacrosanct ancestors. I'd like to be a coin in a pop-up economy, a coin unwavering in the thrill ride of history, of X value one day, the same X value the next, and the next. I want to dance. I love to dance and dance within me. I don't want to dance in couples when it's just me. I want to dance the native dance. I love that country. I want to be the superhero of my identity. I'd like to know if the other side is trying to screw me. I'd like to know if the water I drink is pure for me, that I am pure. Anyway, so there's that one. I thought I'd read a few poems from this book of Rimbaud translations. Well, maybe just one. This one in English is called The Stolen Heart. And it's written, I mean, I think you could see it in my little thing. It's, you know, Rimbaud actually wrote in, let's say, forms. This one seems to depict, no one really knows what Rimbaud was specifically writing about, but it seems to depict that he was being actually sexually abused by a bunch of Paris Commune soldiers, but who knows? Who knows? And the one word that's a little bit weird is ithiphallic, which seems to be a word that he made up, which has to do with penises being in a phallic position. Anyway, The Stolen Heart. My sad heart dribbles on the deck, my heart slick with tobacco spit. As they spit streams of soup at it, my sad heart dribbles on the deck. Tossed by jeers of a rangy troop who laugh and writhe, oh what a coup. My sad heart dribbles on the deck, my heart slick with tobacco spit. Icky phallic and soldier-esque, their scoffing stuns and depraves it. You see the walls, cartoons they sketch, icky phallic and soldier-esque. Oh, abracadabraic waves, restore my heart, let it be saved. Ithyphallic and soldier-esque, their scoffing stuns and depraves it. When they have used up all their chaw, my stolen heart, can I survive? Their Bacchic belches start to rise when they have used up all their chaw. I'll have a bellyache and retch, my heart dismissed and excrement. When they have used up all their chaw, my stolen heart, can I survive? I think thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was wonderful. Something that's ringing with me about your work is that everyone's identity is a whole identity, of course, but being at the center of a rich intersectionality can result in a sense of unique isolation. And also, I don't know anything about Rimbaud, but you've got me interested in learning more. So thank you so much. Our next poet is CAConrad. CAConrad is the author of the forthcoming book, Amanda Paradise, from Wave Books, coming out in 2021. Their book, While Standing in Line for Death, won a 2018 Lambda Book Award. They also received a 2019 Creative Capital Grant and a Pew Arts and Heritage Foundation Fellowship, the Believer Magazine Book Award, and the Gil Ott Book Award. They regularly teach at Columbia University in New York City and Sandberg Art Institute in Amsterdam. Please view their books, essays, recordings, and the documentary, The Book of Conrad from Delinquent Films online at a link which I will also post in the chat at the end of our reading. Thank you so much, CAConrad. You can unmute yourself and I will shut up.
Thank you. And thank you, Angel and Brian. I like these translations you're doing, Brian. They're wonderful. Is that the book that's coming out next year? I'm not sure. I can ask you later.
Well, it is, and it's the one that I asked you to blurb for me. So if you still want to blurb it, you can.
Oh no, I did. Didn't I send it to you? I did. I love those translations. Well, I'm really happy to be here with you all, celebrating INNISFREE, and it's one of my favorite places, that bookstore, and you know, I'm just going to read my poems. Get out of the way. I have 3 poems to read. Golden in the morning, crane our necks. In a past life, I was a little fish who cleaned the shells of turtles. A dream helped me remember their deep voice of thanks. Many nights I heard sharks waiting for the tide to draw me near. When the calendar runs out, it feels lucky another awaits. All I have ever wanted was to forge the English language into a spear and drive it into my heart between leaping and being shoved. The lonelier place to put my faith for the swinging motion inside the dance we share. Don the extraordinary suit for this ordinary day. Take our time studying trees to imagine the nest we would build if we were birds. I ask all you talented people spending many creative hours perfecting killer drones, guns, and bombs to please know we are waiting for you on the other side of art in the no-kill zone. Visit a living being to eat what falls from their body. I am the wagon wishing you would find me, a maple left uncut. The rock that smashes nothing, seeking a God who speaks to memories of life before the heart's affliction. Your cum tastes like hand sanitizer. What have you been up to? When too many die, we deceive despair with love. Sex with a man at a funeral, destroying death in his car. A holy perforation for a ghost. For best wish, catch apple as it falls. Eat seeds and worm to seal your destiny. Everyone puts what they've got into the wheel driving across America. Raw imagination faster than spirits keep up. I cannot remember the last day a digital watch was the only digital object in my life. The first heart transplant was the last day everyone alive had hearts we were born with, something to get used to. I was only 1 year old, but do not remember anyone objecting to someone keeping their strength with someone else's muscle. This is a love poem for my boyfriend, Trey. Well, it's my version of a love poem. Acclimating to discomfort of the system breaking beneath us. I do not take any calls except from the century we are in. When there is no Bible in my hotel room, it makes me sad to have no place.
Wait, Tyler. Yeah.
Hello? Oh, do you mind if I start over? Somebody just, I don't know what that was. Something just happened. Okay. I'm going to start over. Okay. Acclimating to discomfort of the system breaking beneath us. I do not take any calls except from the century we are in. When there is no Bible in my hotel room, it makes me sad to have no place to put my filthy poems for future guests. It is important to let them know everyone should burn with abandon as soon as the heat is available. Be a self-styled alarm clock no one can shut off. Be the storm love places in someone's home. Are you sure we can handle this? Because I'm absolutely certain. Come on, wind, knock us around. We are a tide that cures ills. Look at us in the mirror. As soon as the invented language enters us, something else will vibrate in our skin. Opening door with teeth of the future to the place where we let the freer feeling go. When you told me you had been looking for me, we pressed through every invisible barrier between us. I watched you gently let the gods know you were ready to win the lottery. There were people from the 19th century alive in my lifetime. Many years ago, I met some of them. They are all gone now, as we hold on to the side of one another, howling down the velocity of seconds.
Thank you so much. I love hearing you read. Your poems hold so much energy in them, and I think the energy is amplified by the forms and shapes of your poems. And there are a lot of hopeful notes that I think are really helpful for getting through these strange times. And I think I've really been enjoying seeing them on Instagram. It's really fun to hear your voice paired with them. And yeah, everybody who's not already following CAConrad on Instagram, they post these beautiful works all the time, and they're really fun to see. So thank you so much. There was a little moment during that poem when somebody unmuted themselves. Please, everybody, just keep your microphones on mute so that the poets can read uninterrupted. Our next poet is Gabriel Ojeda-Sagué. Gabriel Ojeda-Sagué is a poet living in Chicago, Illinois. He's most recently the author of Losing Miami, which was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award in Gay Poetry. His fourth poetry book, Madness, is forthcoming from Nightboat Books. He is also the editor of a forthcoming book of sketches by the artist Gustavo Ojeda, out from Sober Scope Press in November. Thank you so much for being here, Gabriel. I'm excited to hear you read.
Hey, thanks so much. Really glad to be here. Some of my favorite poets are in this lineup and in this audience, so it's really nice. I have not been to Boulder, Colorado at all. I have not been to INNISFREE, but I have heard about INNISFREE because of this magical quality of being one of the three. There should be more than three, but as the three, pretty good. So anyways, I'm gonna read some new poems. By new, I really mean they're just from my forthcoming book, Madness, which is coming out from Nightboat in a million years. Don't wait for it, but know about it. And then when it arrives, you'll be like, oh, I heard about that. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a poem called Attachment and Ambivalence. Wander with me between water and water as a program we use to gently suggest a set of ramifications, two isolated owls, for the actions that led to this, to you sitting beside me. And you'll cease to wince at every mention of the name. The leaf cutting the sky from the sky, at least for a moment, implies ambivalence drowned in light. A particle of an unknown element which travels a breath between us and strikes fear into a mother's heart. It's not just some fairy dust, not just the silent operations of aliens. I never made light of difference. I reduced it to lawns moving slowly, the syrup the animals wade through, the dialogue of two agents in disagreement, forecasting by waving my wand over a pile of bones. I say a picture is like a portrait, and that in some way I will get my mulligan. As a little courtesy, don't say you need me. Pare the rind off that starfruit, find an upside in calculus, get cold in the space between your freckles. Look out the window. If I'm right to guess, you already know what I'm gonna say, and you know it's the perfect compliment. The rest of these are shorter poems, almost all from one section of the book. Section of the book is called Some Shields, and I just became very obsessed with that phrase for some reason at some point in my life. I don't know, some shields, but this poem is called Lucky Coin. Reaching my hand across to Dennis, I noticed books he's been hiding from me but cannot imagine giving up. A Coca-Cola on his dresser, a lucky coin, the way he speaks to me when we're writing or when he asks for advice on his lesson plans. It's the polar opposite of face blindness. When I have sweat coming down my ears, it is a sign I'm getting better at seeing my lion's image in a cloud. I depend very little on friendships, but need them. Nobody asks a whale the difference between itself and the ice caps. Endeavors. I get a dreadful worry about blue lights, money, the mail, and this feeling sits in me a long time like pear slices in their juice. As my friend tells me a story of all his recent endeavors, which somehow gets to rumors of the Wendigo, but it doesn't get worse. In fact, I get to picturing time spent with my friend, picturing the time we're spending now, and I tell him to start the story over because I wasn't really listening. This one is called 3 Notes. What you hear now, the crackling of fire, keeps their engines running, sounds out prayers to bad ideas. Your knuckle scraped on the stone has left an impression, or at least it has on me, since I realize now I'm thinking much clearer at the sight of you bandaging. You've left quite the shock in the hiking children too, who look as though they've never seen blood. You set yourself up for failure against a sky showing signs of rain. Better answers come slower, between the first sound and the third. Utter devastation, every moth here spreading a fine pink powder. This one is called On Moss, which I've been told almost doesn't sound like anything, but O-N space M-O-S-S, On Moss. These realizations I keep having as I get older are becoming tiring, as they constantly remind me of my poor shape, the subtle lilt in your speech, wood and felt slammed against timpani. In the park at night, I whisper an awful prophecy. I might die in the dark. I might feed a pigeon. Regardless of who becomes accustomed to this process, to these communications and memorandums on fretting, I must preserve the mental image of moss and the moss itself. The sound of water trickling past a stone. I'm just so mad at you. Alliance. Actually, you know what? I'm not reading Alliance. Alliance is skipped. Flood Map Pinewood is what this one's called. Flood Map Pinewood. A tobacco plant submerged, its flowers cut and released into burning water. It begins the question of prehistory. I think I know you from somewhere. I think I should at least. All this replacement. You push my glasses up along the bridge of my nose, ask where we seem. I know a better way, a system of caves, tricked into believing that there's a human face in these Dolomite hills. To quote something that CA just said, here's a love poem, or at least my kind of love poem. This is called Obsessions. Obsessed with how long it takes for a glacier to melt or a movie to end. Taste of cream soda, all I think about in the afternoons. You pass a finger between one tattoo and another, find that I cannot make amends with every copper thread between my ears. I believe too much in spinning around. I plant matches and pray for a forest. When I am a creature soaked, ride on my back, ride on my back. And this is my last poem, which is called Method of Loci, which doesn't really matter, but the method of loci is this like memory tool that people sometimes use. It's called like the memory palace, where you imagine the things you need to remember in a physical space that you imagine. So anyways, that's what that thing is in real life. Here's a poem with that as its title, Method of Loci. How do I remember your name when the noise of the land is a scrambled half prayer sounding loud and high? I put it in a house in my mind. Though palpating the air in the dark for a sign, some noise, a ligature, everything is clear. Every year is drawn together like the bends in a paper fan. I touch my pinky to the soil. I almost think to sleep. A child is wishing on a pond for a girl's attention. There's no reason to take notes. No one has ever lied. An oil painting of a field with a detail of me, forgetting all my life. That's all for me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. I was struck by the tone of your work and how down to earth it was. And I love the way that the language you chose brought me into my body and into my senses. Thank you so much for sharing. Next up is Nikki Wallschlaeger. Nikki Wallschlaeger's work has been featured in The Nation, Brick, American Poetry Review, Witness, Kenyon Review, Poetry, and others. She's the author of the full-length collections Houses from Horseless Press in 2015 and Crawl Space from Bloof in 2017, as well as the graphic book I Hate Telling You How I Really Feel, 2019, also from Bloof Books. She is also the author of an artist book called Operation USA through the Baltimore-based book arts group Container, a project acquired by Woodland Pattern Book Center in Milwaukee. Her third collection, Water Baby, is forthcoming from Copper Canyon Press in 2021. Thank you so much for being here, Nikki.
Thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. The poems I'm going to read tonight, except for this first one, are all from the book I'm writing now. So they're all pretty new. And I'll start with this one. This poem is about something really obscene I saw at my spouse's parents' cabin. So I wrote a poem about it. Lake come and gone. I'm in a kayak watching a man dressed as Uncle Sam, waving around a plastic sword, guiding the pontoon parade across the lake. It's a tradition to adorn boats with beer slides, streamers, and women wearing screen print t-shirts that say Lake Girl in collegiate font. Despite the last 4 years of spiraling national leadership, the vacationers deliver convincing displays of loyalty, not exempt from doubts. As for me, the other side of the grand show, I'm trying to balance my life inside the kayak. It's their big day, the birth of a nation in crisis. Overhead, a bald eagle appears about 50 feet from our position. Symbolic gesture, too good, too perfect to be true. Then I see 3 tiny birds attacking the eagle, driving it from their nests. The mild storms sashaying in, delaying fireworks when everyone will be thinking of going home. Watching porn. I rarely watch porn, most of it is boring, but today I am bored and kind of horny, moth-eaten and solicitous in a new robe. A woman is sufficiently enjoying herself. She's watching herself enjoying herself. What they're doing when they have time or make the time, oxidized, relished. Bodies are beautiful, so is pleasure. I want pleasure. I'm here with my insecurities and boredom, watching tutorials on contouring the body around people and making myself enjoy it. I'm enjoying people and their expert pleasure. When I'm done, I feel like I punched out at work, having fucked off all day at jobs paying nothing, needing content to fill my loneliness and time, for work not to be boring, enjoying myself alone in my loneliness, watching across the rooms what I look like, experiencing pleasure or loss. Needing pleasure began after my first orgasm, second time I had sex, looking for it everywhere, looking for it in places that didn't make any sense. There were orders to be filled, a need for pleasure. Filled it as a girl learning on the job. Girls are experts at contouring mistakes. Today is a mental health day, watching videos on how to fuck and maintain desire, how to make mouths look like they produce desire. Today I'm not at work kissing ass for employment. I remember a few times when kissing wasn't boring. Making out with my boyfriend for hours in the park. We kissed for hours for a year before we had sex. After we had sex, we forgot how to kiss for hours. And we fucked all the time. Spring, summer, winter, fall, before and after school. I had a busier sex life than my friends' mothers. We were adults and after-school fast food jobs filling orders. I got bored, quit my job, fuck guys who didn't kiss me at all or wouldn't remember if they had. A lost position. People get lost as they can be, long as they are willing to go, and then they ask to go further. Give me a leader, they say. We want to go farther than before. So a new leader is created out of their ignorance from the deepest blood cut. New leader gets in position. Together they sign a covenant. It is long and nobody reads it, but it says what they want to hear. It says, staying lost is the greatest asset anyone could hope for. Cloud of feelings. I want to hold a cloud, but it's made of air. A smog of tweets makes a world go round. The confusion of clouds predicting a storm. Think nothing of it, bombs are natural now. Explosives wrapped in their hollowed brows, exploiting crisis and pushing the inevitable. Bluebirds know it's a new day, they whistle without confusion. Listen, how do we speak to light at the end of the holographic tunnel? My first smoking question of a new season. To begrudge feelings we once had, released. The future reading books and understanding tweeting, unbreathable air. In the confusion of so much suffering and sovereign comfort, exploring the rights of violence, an old feeling publicized and burning, cyclones, hailstorms, slapping the drafts. Think nothing of it, birds. Get out of their way. The powerful are talking. Don't breathe the confusion, sideswiped in holographic traffic. A question for bluebirds. If you, dear birdsong, took away our clouds of feelings. Would anyone notice? Send tweet. Party girls. Whatever ties that held us back got higher. We created a circuit board and lived there. On the floor, our boyfriends made $5K a night, forgetting they used to be here for the music. There were benefits. We had our pick of the best candy, double and triple stacked medicines, stamped with butterflies, money signs, stars, pineapples, smiley faces, crosses, Ferraris. Once absorbed, you felt a hell of a lot better. Black market pharmaceutic marshmallows taken at the right time. 12 a.m., again at 4 a.m., to keep the vibe of induced euphoria rolling. Often the real party was in the bathrooms. Nobody cared if society had outlawed you from their public arenas. The standardized boundaries were fruitless, incoherent under the rustling of our fat pants, handcrafted bracelets spelling out our most beloved desires like peace, love, unity, respect, and ecstasy. We congregated as we made new families. If the DJ sucked, or when we were terrified to feel what our bodies were saying to let go. God walks out of the room when you're thinking about money. And this is a quote from the Quincy Jones interview that came out a couple of years ago. God slams the door on a lot of folks these days. The billionaires, he slammed the door so hard the door broke off on its hinges. Dearest daughters, wealthy men across the board with their women think they invented beauty. If you go downtown, lesser demons scramble on their hind legs through any piece luminous with delusions of wealth. God realizes this, but like I said, God is still human and has his idiosyncrasies. Instead of finally doing something about it, he grabs his jacket, slams the door, and takes a cab to his favorite tavern. He doesn't figure out how to speak to his children since they left his house, outmatched in cleverness and technology. They petition him when he's supposed to be working, each demanding their own empires. And since God hates feeling guilty, he pays some of them off. Believe me, my broke ass has called his office more than once. Nearly impossible to get an appointment, which is just as well. For generations, women have been surviving with God and will keep surviving without God. And then here's my last poem, the one I was talking about before, about my first car, which I just got. I just learned how to drive at 38. Love letter to my first car. Dearest Marie, at the gas station this morning, I gave you a name. Today, I filled you with fuel for the first time. You prefer regular unleaded. No unnecessary foppery, no fancified juice. You're a woman who understands the mileage of a home-cooked meal. It was a private ceremony and completely spontaneous. I called you my girl as we left the parking lot, gently draping my arm over your shoulder as I checked for vehicles in my blind spots. Marie, I am 38, nearing what is commonly considered the middle of one's life. Driving is a spark plug of a joy I took so long to know, but believe me, I'm making up for it now. With you. The star I ride on the sea of rebellion with an automatic sorrow. You and I, we run a little ragged around our edges. Rust has creased its tears on both our bodies from maneuvering the long road ahead and behind us. But on unsure days, we hold our engines steady. Next week, I promise to take you to the shop for your back right brake that makes a painful crushing sound when we lawfully stop. I'm also terribly sorry about fucking up your right front bumper when I was trying to back out onto the hill. Please forgive my newbie clumsiness. I'm still getting used to the trifling freedoms you were prepared for, and I hope we can still be friends. Yours, a poet with a probationary license. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I see somebody popping up who I can't mute for some reason. I think their name is Irene, if I read that correctly. If you could just mute yourself, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. Nikki, I feel like the first poem you read, I'm calling in from Dubuque, Iowa. So I just kind of identified with it as like a true portrait of the rural Midwest.
Yeah.
And
cabin culture. Yep.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for being vulnerable with us and sharing so much new work. And an idea that I'm taking with me from your poems today is that nature just isn't confused until we show up with all our fancy gadgets.
Yep.
So thank you again. Our next poet is Prageeta Sharma. Prageeta Sharma is the author of the poetry collections Grief Sequence from Wave Books, 2019, Undergloom from Fence Books in 2013, Infamous Landscapes, also from Fence Books in 2007, The Opening Question from Fence Books in 2004, which won the 2004 Fence Modern Poets Prize, and Bliss to Fill from Sub Press in 2000. She is the founder of the conference Thinking Its Presence, Race, Creative Writing, Literary Studies, and Art, a recipient of the 2010 Howard Foundation Award and a finalist for the 2020 Four Quartets Prize. She has taught at the University of Montana and is now the Henry G. Lee 37 Professor of English at Pomona College. Thank you so much for being here, Prageeta. I'm excited to hear you read.
Thanks for having me. I think in 2013, I made it over to INNISFREE Books and loved perusing poetry and seeing everything. And so I'm happy to support the bookstore and the community, and to thank Conrad for this gathering too, and all these extraordinary poets. Thanks so much. I'm going to read 2 poems from Grief Sequence and then 2 new poems. This one just starts the sequence section. Learning without knowing, implicit. Loving, explicit. Dying, explicit. Organizing, implicit. Institutional hate, implicit. Grieving, explicit. Compromise, implicit. Dreaming, organizational. Staying in house, implicit. Leaving house, explicit. Sequence, then recursion. I just have to find this. This kind of connects to that poem. I look at your handwriting. I look at your handwriting and it pushes space into its narrow field. His were big atmospheric box crosses with architecture. Your speech and talk are the opposite. You have soft catalectic vowels. His were hard chains of dream speak. How is this possible? What is richly characterized by handwriting? What is its dictionary of attributes? Where is there an airy space between the way he and I loved? Because then and suddenly I loved again, and it arose against sequential time. This makes loving 2 persons its own counsel. One followed the other, but there is still yet simultaneity. The other loved me, but had trouble loving, and I had to absorb this after death. There is loving without knowing, and loving with so much knowing. 2 bodies separate in the night after the coupling of evening time. One goes up to his room and slowly dies, cigarette after cigarette. After his feeding tube and bile duct were inserted, he wouldn't sleep in our bed. The 2 broad categories of sequence learning exist, explicit and implicit, with subcategories which also become dreaming and reading the handwriting. You are the first person, and you are one person, and there is a second person. Explicit sequence learning has been known and studied since the discovery of sequence learning. However, recently, implicit sequence learning has gained more attention in research. A form of implicit learning may be implicit dreaming. Maybe a contrary dreaming occurs. Maybe dying is more implicit in its sequence. Maybe learning refers to the underlying methods of dreaming, or airy spaces, or writing words to both beloveds, that contrary people are unaware of what's explicit and what's implicit, In other words, learning without knowing is dreaming. And I'm just going to read 2 poems from this new manuscript. The title of it is after, but these 2 poems have nothing to do with the title, but it's One Mint One, and it's after Barnett Newman's One Mint One series, but it's called One Mint and then WON, so One Mint One. But these 2 are very different from that idea. But anyway, I won't even try to explain any more about it. But I moved from Missoula to California, and I don't know what the custom is in California, but and I apologize if I offend anybody with my pet peeve. But I'm from New York, so I like thinking about using the word therapist versus counselor. And so this poem is it's titled Therapist versus Counselor. And in some places people use counselor as their term. In some places people use therapist. So I wrote about that. Missoula, people used counselor. I don't know in Claremont. Therapist versus counselor. I prefer therapist because the term counselor suggests the patient is not a patient, but a passerby in need of menial advice. Did you grow up by the sea or close to its New England windows? Did your psyche let in the tranquility of being near the sea? I pretend I did so I can learn more about the illustrative tide, see if it helps me breathe, if it calms my innards. But I find domestic interiors soothing like this sofa and its plush. Therapists have permanence in their furniture. I have shame that I share my sorrows and fears with the wrong people, except for my therapist, a kind grave digger excavating the figurative despair, helping me find the sweetest and bluest violets, the ones that counselors might not mention. I recount the flowers I continue to like despite what's outside of this window's frame, a troll government, an authoritarian we are trying to forget in here. I do respect counselors, though. I'm just nitpicking the terms. I'll end with this last poem. Metaphorically charged. I meant well and resisted comparisons for a while because those who might cajole me into finding their inaccuracy accurate need likenesses. I was meant to find myself inside a metaphor, but I wasn't there and felt disillusioned. Instead, I built the word with the bricks of what comparison might mean with another suffix. What I meant was I was keen to add nouns. I wanted to add wound to the comparison and build its condition to be matter of fact. I found the condition of the wound to be built into its state of cruelty. She said they have wounds too, and that's why they feel this way. I said I'm not trying to wound them, but they like thinking of my wounds in a certain way. I find their wounds to affect cruelty, and mine did not attend the same effect. I'm angry at those who have been economical about what I might have meant. I'm despairing because I created meaning from a grievance nobody dared to own. They wanted the grievance to be possessed after it was vetted, and I didn't want to give it to them. And then they lied about what they thought of comparisons, which are metaphors lying about what they said they mean. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Prageeta. Thank you for sharing your work. I feel like there's a feeling of moving through lots of different spaces that shows through your work. And I love the way that your language was so elegant while also still being accessible and easy to listen to. And I'm super curious to see the forms of your poems on the page. Thank you so much for sharing. Our 7th and final poet tonight is Subhaga Crystal Bacon. Subhaga Crystal Bacon is the author of 2 volumes of poetry, Blue Hunger, that came out this year from the Metho Press, and Elegy with a Glass of Whiskey from BOA Editions in 2004. Or is it BOA Editions, but in all capital letters? I don't know how to read. Don't ask me. A cisgender, queer-identified woman, she lives, writes, and teaches on the east slope of the North Cascade Mountains in Twisp, Washington. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in the Florida Review, Lavender Review, Bombay Review, and River Heron Review. She's currently working on a collection of poems commemorating trans and gender nonconforming women and men murdered this year. Thank you so much for being here, Subhaga. I am excited to hear your reading.
Thank you, Drea, and thanks everybody for listening and for Conrad for pulling this all together. So I'm going to read a couple of poems from my recent book, and I'm going to read a couple of poems from the manuscript I have in progress. Nights without you. Nights used to be dark inside, blue lit by the TV screen, and outside dim from streetlights. I drew the blinds in my solitude and drank, and watched predator eating prey with a cool voice behind. Watched movies in black and white, rich tones and shades of gray. I used to write at night, staying up late with the wisps of drink and longing, my empty bed. I used to drive in the cold nights to the city, skinny and leather clad, prowling other rooms, dark and loud with strangers and drum beats. I was Clint Eastwood. I was Steve McQueen with big hair and red lipstick, waiting at the bar for someone to turn on my lights. Now it's light inside, golden with fire, shades drawn against the cold, black night, punctured with stars. It's a long road to any place loud. Night is music, layered and fragrant as wine. I step out for wood, for radiance, face upturned like a cup, drink it in. Venus crossing toward morning, light bearer. You're away another day. I'm here, empty of longing, luminous, lambent. That's my version of a love poem. Keep up with the tradition tonight. And this is the title poem from the book, Blue Hunger. In direct sunlight, the Stellar's jay shines iridescent blue, the same color as the sharkskin pants my brother wore in 1968, he and his pals carousing. The jay hangs precariously from the feeder, seed spilling wantonly on the ground, scattering lesser birds to the naked trees. In shade, his pointed cap black as India ink, a nib that sprawls along the bark to reach the suet, leaving Morse-like code in falling crumbs, his sharp beak a tool and a weapon. My brother fell 30 feet when he was 23, before he fell from grace, hanging precariously from the family tree. He broke his thigh bone, tore muscle and skin, thick denim. It broke his fall. In the hospital room, alone with me one night, bored and lonely, his hands signed desire over the other broken part of him. He wanted me to look, to lift the sheet and see. Seeds falling in fallow ground remind me that and the quick blue slice of hunger. So I'm part of a writing group here in Twist, Washington, where I live, and one of our group members offered a course for us writing poetry in form poems of social protest, and I sort of fell into this project of writing poems to commemorate each of the murdered trans and gender nonconforming people so far this year in 2020. So I'm just going to read a few of those that are forthcoming actually in the Bombay Review in December. Each one has a little epigraph. They're called gleaned sketches because I've pulled the material mostly from social media and news accounts. Brayla Stone, 17, Little Rock, June 25th. You gotta forgive me if you feel I'm too much. Brayla, there was a lot of you to reckon with for only 17. Your Facebook page is full of photos of you in pinup pose, your tongue stuck out, these interspersed frequently with the faith that God got my back. The paradox gives me whiplash. I feel very old and very white swimming up from your social media sites. The wigs of many colors, the clothes likewise, and eyelashes the size of butterfly wings. I feel your fight, your will not to just live, but to thrive. 17 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and someone paid $5,000 to have you killed by another teenager who already once beat a murder charge. You had humor and pride and grit and some source of cash that kept you in brand name flash and bought a car for your mama. Your body was left in a car on a walking path in a suburb called Sherwood, which is ironic in a sad way with its innocent suggestions of Robin Hood and Maid Marian. The cops say there's no indication of a hate crime, Arkansas being one of 4 states in which they don't exist. Forgive us, Brayla, for not being enough for you. Mercy Mac Ritchie, 22, Dallas, June 30th. This man teased my bestie for being gay in middle school. Whole time he really had a crush on her. Mercy, I try to imagine your fear being chased and shot by Angelo Walker, who bullied you in middle school. Only you two know what happened in the days before your death, the video you planned to release. Once again, a man has killed a trans woman because he couldn't live with his desire. It started in your teens, his teasing, taunting, then as adults, to shoot you while you ran, to stand over your fallen, your small body, and shoot you again. Mercy, you know the fear that festers to killing disgust. You could prove what Angelo Walker was, what he is still, even with your death on his hands. Killing you does not kill the part of him that wanted you. And this will be the last one for tonight. One of the 5 trans women killed in Louisiana since the start of the year. Shockey Peters, 32, Amite City, July 1st. She was full of laughter and an abundance of life. Shockey, there's a plant that grows here where I live called shadbush. It's also known as serviceberry, but it's the genus I thought of yesterday, seeking shade on the hillside, carrying you with me in the heat of day. How it gives shade, gives fruit, dark purple, seeded and nourishing. Your face, Shockey, in the one photo I can find is round and open, dark and sweet. Your eyes seem to tip up a bit at the outer corners. Your lips are full, plush as pillows. I keep waiting for some story to explain your murder. I don't know how much that matters in the long run, but it might fill the gap around your death. I keep thinking about the name Amite City, from the French for friendship. Like my hometown, Philadelphia, a city of brotherly love. Likewise, no friend to trans women. I spent a month in Louisiana in 1984. It was hot and humid, and I loved the way sweat soaked me, sticking clothes to skin. I used to move from shade to shade, the shadows of buildings, banana trees, and one very large fig tree in the yard of the house I rented, hand-shaped leaves the size of fans. In 1984, Shockey, you weren't even born yet. It was a heyday for being queer if you don't count AIDS. We were all trying on gender like a wig or a dress or suit and tie. I used to go to a drag bar in Philly where I had a crush on a Zoptic redhead I know now to have been trans. She was very kind to me, taking my face in her soft hands, fragrant and styled like the mother of a childhood friend I had to share a bed with one weekend. I clung all night to the far edge in fear I would accidentally touch her. There was a ripeness in her, sweet, nourishing, a kind of femme that makes my heart ache, that I've never known or been. There are many kinds of shadow, Shockey, many kinds of shade. I think of you now inhabiting that, luscious, lush, safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Subhaga. Wow, some of the images in your work were so raw and wide open, just like the wounds that appeared in the work as well. And I also just want to say that it takes a ton of courage to write about so many of the disturbing truths of the current events of our world right now. But that kind of work is so important, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. So that was it for the readings. I just realized I didn't really introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Drea. I'm the manager of INNISFREE, Poetry Bookstore and Cafe. Thank you all again for showing up in support of us tonight. All the poets and all of our community members, thank you so much. I promised to post a bunch of links in the chat at the end tonight. I'm going to post those things in the chat right now. I will also send them out in an email after we're done tonight. This reading was part of a series of events we're hosting online called the INNISFREE workshop series. So if anybody is a poet, a writer, or an artist who would be interested in hosting or being a part of a reading or a workshop, please feel free to reach out to me at the email address I posted in the chat. There are a couple of links to the poet's work that I mentioned earlier. And there's also a link to Collective Aporia, who is the partner that helped make the INNISFREE workshop series possible. They are helping us to organize all kinds of workshops and events, and they host a lot of workshops themselves. And now, just for the last couple of moments, I'm gonna pass the mic over to Brian, the owner of INNISFREE, who I'm sure many of you know and love. I have been seeing his name in the chat over there, and I'm excited to hear from Brian a little bit.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you, dear poets. Thank you so much. This is truly humbling to see you come together and share your voices and the strength in your voices at this time. Thank you. It's been it's been an interesting time to deal with place and space and restraints put on us by someone we rent from. And I told Drea, it's crushed part of my soul, but there's been moments like this along the way that have been so beautiful and meaningful. And my wife and children sometimes want to wave the white flag, but tonight the flag will probably burn it a little bit and see how we can reemerge from all this. But thank you for your time, for your words, for your strength. That's in 2010 when we opened. That was part of the hope that different voices could live and thrive, and that high school students, elementary students, PhDs, poets walking by could all come in a place and share this beautiful gift as humans we get to share of language, music, and coming together over those things. So such simple truths. So thank you all. I deeply touched in my heart and want to let you know this gives us strength to try to re-envision the space. And I've got to see some of you read at CU at different times and come over for readings after. And those are the nights I don't sleep. I just make it through the night till breakfast, so happy and so touched. And I want to thank Drea for her commitment during this time, who is a visionary in her own light and has kept me going on some of the darker days. And I know there's perspective in life, but this is a special spot to us. And we've met so many beautiful people and people who have been grateful for the space, including myself. So thank you all. If you are ever in Colorado, I will pick you up at DIA, take you where you have to go, and your books shall be on our shelves when perhaps we someday reopen. Thank you.
One last thing before everybody signs off. One of the links I posted in the chat was to our Bookshop page, where our social media person, Bridget, who is also here, thank you so much, Bridget, for everything you do for us. She curated a category on our Bookshop page with all of the poets who read tonight. Their work is there, available to purchase. That's one way to support the poets and our independent bookstore. So thank you so much, Bridget. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I can never say it enough times. I will probably annoy you all if I try. So anybody who wants to chat a little bit and say goodbye, I will leave the window open for a few more minutes. I'll stop recording now. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Conrad.
Thank you so much. This
Thanks,
is
Brian.
really wonderful.
Thanks, Drea.
Thank you.